All right, live. Hey Gaetano, thanks for being here. Thanks for accepting this interview. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
Cool, cool. Hi, everyone, and I'm very happy to be here.
Great, great. How it's going?
It's going good. It's going good. Sunny day in Berlin. It's not that common nowadays. Yeah, spring starts very late here, so very happy day.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Gaetano, still thanks a lot for being here. I would say let's get started. So you are head of engineering in Miro. I want to ask you first of all to talk about a little bit about your background, your past experiences. You're Italian like me, so it's really a great pleasure to have you here. And yeah, if you want to present yourself,
Yes,
maybe
yes,
in 5 up to 10 minutes, and then we can start
yes,
with
yes,
other stuff.
yes. Let's do that. Um, so yeah, my name is Gaetano. That is clear. I guess I'm not just Italian like you. I'm actually Southern Italian like you. And when I introduce myself, I always say that uh, I feel very connected with the blue. Sorry for the blue. I'll try to stay more close to the camera. Um, I feel very connected to the land I come from. Um, so my background, I studied computer science at the University of Salerno. Has been a very cool experience. I love a lot of the professors there. I think they are doing an amazing job. I did Erasmus at the University of Portsmouth. I think this was my first experience being abroad and taught me a lot. Um, and then I got a master degree in still in Salerno, and I started working at Vitro Shiset, and I left that place after just a few months to join Ericsson. It was a super cool experience. If people don't know, but in Pagani, which is a very small town, there is one of the three research center of Ericsson in Italy. Still at the time when I joined, which is more than 10 years ago, I think they were at the state of the art. So like I can compare the way we were working at the time with how nowadays startups work. We generally are more innovative than large organizations, which can say a lot on how advanced that place was. And I recommend people to join that place if they can. Um, but my adventure there lasted not too long because so I started with a stage. After the stage, I didn't get the contract extended. There was like a telco crisis at the time, so they couldn't renovate the contract. Actually, they did propose me to join through a consultancy company, but yeah, I would say at that time I was a very young and stubborn person, so I didn't appreciate the change, and I said, you know what, let me try what is out there. So I arrived in Berlin, and I worked for a couple of startups in the first year and a half. Both of them actually didn't go that well. One closed after 6 months, one closed probably after a couple of years of activity. And then joined Bubble, where I spent. Bubble is a learning language company. Probably you might have heard of Duolingo. If you didn't heard of Bubble, they're pretty much the two competitors. Bigger. Duolingo, of course, is much bigger on the US. Also has some, like, it's free pretty much. So like it's a easier entry point. But of course, I trust more Bubble services. I'm biased. So I've been there 7 years, a bit more than 7 years, I would say. Yeah, if I remember well. I started there as a senior engineer. Sorry, as an engineer, and then moved to senior engineer. We were using squad approach. So for a period, so we chapters. So we had this role of architecture owners. I covered that role for a bit. And then we restructured a bit how we were working. So we started leaning less on chapters and having like more organized teams. So we started having engineering managers. I try to apply, they give me the possibilities. So then I started my, let's say, management career. Yeah, I moved up to director of engineering there. And then after 7 years, I felt both me and Bubble probably could leverage a different type of energy. You know, like after several years, you are in the same organization. Like I think what you can give starts to decrease. You know, so I felt I could Bubble could use someone else better than me. And then I joined Miro, and it's probably now 10 months I'm there.
Oh, really cool background. I have more than a few questions about your background. First of all, I would ask you, what about the Erasmus? So, do you think it is an interesting experience? Do you think everyone should apply, and
Yeah.
who you think shouldn't apply for this kind of experience?
So it's funny because between Erasmus people, we have this saying that there are two types of people: the people that did Erasmus and the people that didn't do Erasmus. And if you ask me who should not do that, nobody. There is no reason why you should not do that. In my opinion, we, especially Italians, should really do that. Like, should be an exam to do. You know, should be something that you don't get a degree if you don't do Erasmus, because we are compared to other countries like Germany, where I live, or like others, they tend to travel much more. They tend to explore much more the world. They also have a different perception of how the world works. Like, they look at a lot outside. Italians, for some reason, they're self-centered. They look at always within, and Erasmus can just help to understand that there are other things. Like, it opens this door to say, like there are people that eat spaghetti with the spoon and it's okay, or there are people that drink, like very stupid things, but you just recognize that what you have seen as a common is just your way of doing it. It's not the rule, so.
Makes sense. Makes actually a little sense. Unfortunately, when I was at university, I didn't had your advice, so I didn't apply for Erasmus. But if I have to think back, maybe this was kind of an error. But
And I can tell you, like, so at the University of Salerno, you did the same. Pretty much, we study on English books.
definitely,
So like, reading for me was fine, understanding was fine. My speaking skills were terrible, but seriously terrible. And I'm sorry if the professor Tagliaferri will see this. I remember the day when he did the interview, and he was asking like, "How is your English?" And I bluntly lie. I said that my English was perfect, but it was not. It was not. And so, like, it's not even the language is not a bridge. You'll figure out. Like, humans can adapt to many things, and this is one of the things you can adapt. So it's completely fine. You can do that. Anybody can do that.
definitely, definitely. You say that you joined Berlin after your first working experiences. I want to ask you, first of all, why you decided to go to Berlin, and if you had any connection there, or if you just said, "Hey, let's change city, let's change country, let's change everything."
Yeah. So now I might just go a bit deeper in that. So I fall in love with Ericsson. Like, it was a very amazing place to work with. I still actually, by time to time, chat with some of the people over there.
Oh, cool.
Just to give you context, like, for especially for people that worked in Italy, like, Ericsson had a gym, had a place where to eat. Like, they will provide lunch. We were working following like advanced agile practices. Imagine that few of the managers that were working at the time, now they are agile coaches at Agile 42, which is a standard, like it's like the leader organization to set like agile practices. So it was very cool. It was very cool. And when this opportunity disappeared in front of me, I was like, okay, what else? How? Because I worked in other organizations in Italy, and it's not the standard. It's not, it's not common. So I was yeah, I was a bit disappointed, and I've been always especially in youth, I was pretty much stubborn and self-aware of my skills, so I didn't want to give that up. So what actually did, I picked all the money I saved across the couple of years I worked in Italy, and I went again to Portsmouth, the town and the city where I did Erasmus. This time I went there to learn English for real. So I really burned all my money. I was there for 2 months, and I was doing 8 hours of English every day.
Wow,
So
that's
I
a
was,
lot.
yes, I was doing like a school. I came back with an amazing level of English, which is probably twice better than what you hear now, but doesn't matter. Um, and then this was the time that my girlfriend finished the bachelor degree in Salerno, and I told her that I would like to go somewhere abroad, and was her choice whether to join me going abroad or whether, because she wanted to do university like in Rome or Milan, but I said consider also abroad, and abroad you even have the opportunity to choose where we go. I have no opinion, like it's okay, I just want to go abroad.
I have a personal question regarding that. I'm not sure if I will add this question inside the final video, but I'm kind of in the same situation because my girlfriend is actually studying in Naples, and she's studying for her bachelor. So I'm kind of in the same situation. Um, what what your girlfriend thought when you said, "Hey, let's move in another country," and how did you approach this discussion? Because as you said before,
Yeah,
uh, we Italians tend to like our place, kind of. So, what was the discussion?
I mean, the discussion wasn't easy. Like, let's say that she wasn't super open at the beginning on that. Um, but to me, that was a decision, right? I would go abroad with or without her. Like, I needed to do this. And at the time we were together, probably, yeah, like 1 year, 1 year and a half. I mean, we are 12 years now together. We're getting married next month. Uh,
Congrats.
yes,
Wow.
so like we spent some time together by now. And we ended up having two cities in the short list, was Stockholm and Berlin. And I, at the time, I was very Italian in that sense. Like I had no clue what Berlin was. Like I never been in Berlin. I had no idea, nor I cared what it was in front of me. I just wanted a change. So when she proposed Berlin, because it was southern than Stockholm, so probably nicer weather, then said, well, okay, whatever, let's go. And this is how it happened. It wasn't simple to make that decision. I mean, for me, it was simple. For me, it was more of idealistic decision. I want to try something different, and if I don't like, I can go back. That's something probably here there is a learning for a lot of people. In Italy, there is this thing that if you don't get whatever, if you don't get a degree within certain years, then you failed, or if you don't do this within this year, then you failed. There is no such a thing. Like when you're in your 20s, probably even the beginning of your 30s, you can make plenty of mistakes and you have enough time to fix them, right? So like if anybody decides to go abroad and then decide that it's not working for them, they can go back. They are not like somebody's going to nail them to the ground and they can move anymore, right? So it's completely fine. And we should take those decisions much more lightly than we are taking them, to be very honest. Like, it's something you should think about very deeply. If you have a family, you have kids, maybe they go to school and this going to impact them. But if you don't have any of this, like, it's easy, like
That's
you
right.
can take a plane and go back, and that's it.
Yeah, most people think that relocating, for example, is a one-way door, but instead it is, a 2 days, two-way door. So
Yeah,
makes a lot
absolutely.
of sense. I have last question about your background because I think it's quite interesting that after 7 years in Babel, you decided to go away because you said, as you said before, I thought that for me and for the company, it was better to kind of change. Do you
Yeah.
think that after 7 years in the same company, you are kind of blind to change? So you have a lot of expertise inside the company, but maybe you are also a little bit blind over the processes, over the technology, over the business, or do you think there is another reason or a set of reasons?
No, I mean, it's that's a fair point. I mean, my time at Bubble. So I'm, as a person, I'm generally very curious, and I get, even if you look at my hobbies, I start a new hobby every 3 months. I get crazy about it. I read like the impossible out of it. Like, and then when I feel I know enough, I get bored, and I start a new one. Right. So, and you can see in my career at Bubble, I actually changed a lot of things over the years. Even though there were 7 years, like pretty much every couple of years, I was doing something very different. Going back to your question, that was my feeling. And maybe if I find myself in another company after 7 years, I might or I might not have the same perception. One maybe one aspect to bring into the conversation is the fact that companies grow, right? Like when I joined Bubble was 250 people. When I left, we were 700 something.
Wow.
So I had to scale together with the organization, right? When I started being an engineering manager was very different compared the engineering manager that were reporting to me when I left Bubble. Like the requirements were different, right? We needed to be like when I joined, when I joined, I don't remember, but probably there were something like 6, 7 teams, and when I left, it was twice and a half, probably that number, right? So yeah, like we had to scale, and there are even some people, I know some people in leadership that actually specialize in journey of the company, right? So if you imagine a startup, you go seed, series A, series B, series C, like maybe there are specific people in leadership that are good at bringing them from series A to series C. And then they leave and they go to the next one, pick it from series A, bring it to series C, right? So that's also the thing, right? Like it depends whether it's their specialization or whether it's things. The aspect of being blind on changes is very common, right? It's very common for people that are long in an organization to get used to the old way of working, if there is a change, or the fact that maybe, like there are, every company has some challenges that last many, many years, right? And, like if you see the same challenge for many years, it becomes harder to see the little progress you make every single day, because your brain still remembers that problem was there from the beginning. So there is a lot of it. My really honest motivation was I wanted somebody, so I felt I had less energy to bring disruptive changes. And also I was thinking that I didn't know whether I was serving the best Bubble, right, for what I had to do. I mean, I have an amazing relationship with the CTO, previous CTO. Now is just managing director and focusing on investing. With my previous boss, the chief revenue officer, like I have an amazing relationship. and maybe we can, when we are going to talk about networking, probably this is going to come up as
Definitely.
a topic. But like, you know, this doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing, right? Like, I really felt I did that for my and also the company interest.
All right. Wow. A lot of interesting stuff is going here. Uh, I definitely need to rewatch our conversation later because I think right now I have a lot of insights, but probably with the second rewatch I will get more. Um, Thanks for this deep dive into your background. Let's talk, if you're okay with this, about learning, because I think that for me, for you, of course, and for our entire community, learning is a huge topic. Not so huge, but really important because we are developers. We are paid to solve problems, actually, and I think that in our field, in our industry, you have to learn for actually all your life because. It's fun and it's required from our industry. Let's start from the ground. You say that you really enjoyed your time at university. Same for me. I really loved that. But do you think it's still worth to go to the university, or do you think that, well, of course, there is no solution for everyone. Um, mm, there are a lot of different solutions, but what solution do you think do you want advice to a new developer right now or someone who just wants to learn more about computer science in general?
Yeah, that's a that's a very interesting question. Um, yeah, you probably said that there is not one rule that fits for everyone. Um, you know, there are things that university gives you, um, and will only university give you those things? No, right? Like, it's you can learn those things, and not only about learning, because university, I don't think, gives you only learning. Gives you networking, um, and you can find that those things also in other places, in other ways. So I don't think that I don't think university is required. Like, I worked with some of the best engineers that actually don't yet have a degree, or they took a degree because of visa. What's called the visa in Italian?
Ship,
Um, no, sorry, what did you say?
the visa sponsorship required for
Yes,
work.
yes. Like, when they needed to get from different countries into Germany, for example. So yeah, like I don't think there is a rule that fits everyone. Talking about university, like, when I think about university, it's a structured approach, so you get more guided, and if you're left alone, you need to have more self-discipline in, you know, being able to organize yourself. There is also another thing, right? Like, and I don't know if we were talking about this before we started recording or not, but um, uh, you have this group of people that are with you, and you learn with, and you connect, you understand how to work in groups, which is very crucial in our job. So like, it gives a lot that it creates the environment where skills can be developed and information come in, right? Then it's always up to the individual to take advantage of the situation or not. And of course, this environment, you can create it elsewhere. It's just a bit, I would say, it's more difficult. It's You need to put more effort.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe we can talk about that later. But one thing that, for example, when I went to university, no one said me is please don't spend all your time studying. Spend a little bit, or yeah, a little bit of your time by creating relations with people, because that's definitely super useful. Because as you said, our is a teamwork. So we work in team, we work with other people, we just don't write software or create algorithms and stuff like that. unfortunately, when I went to the university, no one said me that, so I had to figure it out more in the second year. But probably university is still, for at least for me, a great place to learn not just coding, but learn how to stay with a group of people to achieve a single goal. Um, what? How do you keep yourself updated? What are your inputs? I mean, right now I think you are not coding anymore. Uh, yeah, but you have still to keep yourself updated. So, what are your inputs, books, articles, whatever?
Yeah. So uh, I leverage a lot network, like people in my network, either LinkedIn or actually colleagues. They might share articles about things they're reading. I do the same. So like by nature, you end up with a set of things that you want to read or you are interested about. Of course, there are books. I mean, nowadays my books are mainly about like leadership or changes, these type of things. Um, um, yeah, I mean, I read about technology, of course, because like it's of course interesting, and it's part of my job still, even though I might not code. And I have to say that all of the things from technology mainly comes from the engineers I work with, right? Like they might share in team channel, oh, I read about this, or we want to use the new version. And I go on, either the technology documentation, or I start reading some Medium articles about like how things will be. I also leverage talks. I nowadays I read much less than I'm used to. I consume much more like podcasts or like talks or just YouTube videos that they talk about things. And if I need to spot a particular thing, I actually don't. I'm topic based, so I look for resources around specific topics, and I have a Google Doc where I list all my things to read or watch, and yeah, and I don't have a perfect recipe, to be very honest. It's maybe this comes from my curiosity attitude. Like if I see something shiny, I generally jump on it. Yeah.
Wow, I think we have kind of the same approach. One thing that helped me a lot, because I have a lot of Discord groups, LinkedIn groups, a lot of stuff around here, and I am literally bombarded with a lot of content. So one thing I did more or less 1 year ago, I installed a Chrome extension for Notion, which you can have this shortcut and you just
Uh-huh.
save the link in the read letter, and then you go
Oh,
in this Notion table and you can read, and you can add, for example, okay, I want to read this, which has this, for example, leadership tag or stuff like that, and this
nice,
quite
nice.
useful, works really well. So we are talking about learning. You said, I have here our notes about this interview, and you left a lot of really great insights about the growth mindset, how it works, and also regarding multiple cultures. So, do you want to
Yeah,
speak a little bit about that?
yeah. Of course. I think this has been, and probably, I think going back to our first topic around why Erasmus might be useful, I think this is something that I learned by leaving Italy for a period of time. Uh, I like culturally, and I don't know if you would agree with me, but it's very common that in uh, or at least this is how I perceive it. In where we come from, it feels that you either can do it or cannot do it. And like, if you pass an exam, you can do it. If you don't pass an exam, you can't do it, which is very wrong. Like, it makes no single sense. Like, it's not the way how humans work. Like, if you pick a newborn, they can't walk yet. At a certain point, they will walk, and at a certain point, they will run. Uh, so I think there is one of the like if any of you watching this read about growth mindset and fixed mindset, um, the growth mindset is the fact that pretty much you assume or you have a principle or a belief that if you want, you can learn it in pretty much, right? So when you talk about yourself and your skills, you might want to say, um, for example, we were talking about I don't speak German, right? So we can say I don't speak German yet. And if there is a moment of my life that I actually want to learn this, I can. Like there is nothing that stops me from doing that. And it's something that it's a bit easier for us as engineers to understand because just technology changes rapidly, so we need to adapt a lot. So there is more this mindset, but culturally, where we come from, I have the feeling that there is a lot this barrier that this social pressure that create for ourselves of being able to do something or not. It's a very rigid schema.
Do you think it's just an Italian thing? Because um, I watched a couple of videos on YouTube with, for example, US and UK students from college, and they have kind of, I don't want to say the same approach, but they have the same problems that we have. So do you think this is related to our ecosystem that we live in,
No,
or
no, of course, it's not that we have a plug that other people don't, right? It's not about that. Like this is probably a very common. It's spread everywhere else. The reason I was referring to our culture is because I come from that culture and I understand that much more than others, and I think that we as new generation should try very hard to mutate that culture because I think this is a very key element for success, whatever success is, right? He's being good at your job or is being chilled about your life and be happy about what you have. Can be a lot of things, can be translated in many things what success could look like for a person. Um, but like I'm doing this talk and we chatted over LinkedIn and a few other ways about this. I'm doing this because I want to support the community and the people and the new, let's say, the people that are starting these jobs where I come from, right? And that's why I'm talking about my culture, because I hope that together we can try to mutate and innovate a bit more the culture where we come from.
how do you think that this can happen? Because, for example, I see a lot of stereotypes. You said about university, if you pass the exam, it's fine. Maybe at the first attempt, if you don't pass it, you kind of cannot pass it. um, when I was at university, I feel that a lot.
Yeah.
um, how can you think we can mitigate this situation?
I mean, uh, this comes from also external input, right? Just to give you an example. If you worked for Italian companies, or like probably you know that a lot of Italian companies, when they check CV, they check score of a degree and whether you did actually a degree connected to this. Uh, you probably did an interview. I mean, not probably. You did an interview with a company that works abroad, so a German company, and you realize that they pretty much didn't care whether
No
you had
one
the
can.
degree, whether what was the score. The question was, can you do the job? Yes, no. Can you learn new things? Good. That's it. And I think this comes from, so I understand also why we have this tendency, because there are external forces that makes us work that way or think that way. And on this side, it might require time to change. Um, uh, Also because it depends on the market, right? Like generally, the companies you work with are more like a leaner companies, smaller companies, like more innovative. Um, and in countries like Germany, there is more demand than offer. So you have to work. In Italy, is probably the opposite, right? There is less work than people that want to work many times. So like if 500 people apply for one job, they have also to figure out how to filter out, right? So like, I'm not blaming them to start doing this. Going back to the question, what we can do, I think is to leave it, like leave those new way of, or this different way rather than a new way of living, right? Like, because that's culture, right? So like the way you speak with your friends, or the way you behave at work, the way you behave with your family, like over time, over years, like things will be adopted and the change will happen, right? Like it's a bit like leading by example in a way. Yeah, I would say.
I wanna think a little bit more about that offline, because I think this is quite an useful insight, but will take a little bit of time to apply it, because yeah, I feel that this behavior is still quite strong. But never mind. We have a huge topic which I know you are a big fan of, which is giving and receiving feedback, hopefully in a good way, in a consistent way. So, would you like to talk about it a little bit?
Yes. Um, I think here we can start talking about culture a bit more.
Yeah.
Like, we were talking about culture, right? Like I don't know if you read the culture map,
Yeah,
but
it's.
there are.
Oh, well, my manager advised me to read this, and was, at least for me, it was really a game changer, because I work in a team of kind of 10 engineers from different nations. And after I read this book, I literally figured it out. Oh, okay, that's why that's happening, and that's how I can improve my communication with those people, you know?
Yeah, and like in Italy, and please chime in, try to help me if you perceive it that way or differently. The way I perceive Italian culture is, when we talk about feedback, we are more open to give stronger feedback when it's about like negative, compared to when we do positive, right? So if you have that, if you have the like the key of the culture, so you can decode stuff, it's probably okay. But if you start going to work with people that come from different cultures, they are going to be they are not going to understand what's going on there, right? And like, I think one big difference is also how receiving feedback is perceived. Like, we should see a feedback as a, whether it's positive or negative, regardless, right? But the feedback is not about us as a person, but the feedback is about the actions we made and the impact they created, whether negative or positive, right? It's about what you have done in that moment. It's not you, right? It's not you as a person, right? If one day I pick a glass of water and it falls out of my hand, and somebody tells me, "Oh, you made a mess on the floor," that's a feedback. Probably not a useful feedback at that point in time, but it's a feedback. And it's not, doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It means that my end, that like, it's a very instant observation, right? And then, of course, like a proper feedback, it's something a bit beyond an observation, right? You probably want to extract patterns out of an observation. So if I see the same observation multiple times, I can assume that that person has a pattern in that behavior. And probably that feedback would be more meaningful to that person, right? I could provide more examples. I could provide multiple times more what is the result of that action, and what might be a way out of that. Or a way how to use it even more if it's a positive one. Yeah, giving feedback. I mean, you can read probably 700,000 frameworks.
Fancy stuff.
Yeah, they're like, but pretty much they do the same, right? Like the essence is the same, right? You try to um, uh, give a feedback. So what you observed in a very let's say fact-based way. You try to the person to understand what is the impact of their action on around them, so that they can perceive how the outside world can get that, and a way out, or a way to change this. Uh, I want to go back 1 second again on culture and feedback. Um, I don't know if you ever noticed, when people give feedback, they use either upgraders or downgraders.
Oh yeah.
Upgraders are like totally, really, absolutely, or like when you are more on the let's say British, they have more these maybe sort of, I guess. It's very interesting. Uh, and like can make these words can really, really need to understand those words. Like imagine I go to I think one of the extreme I have a very close friend. He's Indian, and coming from Italy, I've been very direct in my feedback. So I would generally use upgraders, but he will generally use downgraders because of his culture. So it was, if he will give me a feedback, I will feel like it will feel watered out. I will not understand. It will give me a feedback. Like it was like, yeah, okay, I'm saying something, but it will feel so soft that I didn't have enough. It didn't feel urgent or important enough for me to take any action. It was telling me something, right? But when I was telling him something with upgraders, it would feel smashed. I was telling you're a horrible person, like will feel super strong to him. And then I working a lot with this person, actually learned how to do things. Another part that, in my opinion, is very important with the feedback is assumptions, right? Uh, Humans, and especially engineers, they were used to make infer. We're used to infer what is the, I see this, then it's that. We our brain really works like this, and we might be biased to make assumptions. And when we give feedback, it's very important that we name out those assumptions.
Yeah.
So let me try to come up with an example. Let's say we are on a meeting, and the two of us, or maybe a larger group, but the two of us are in the meeting, and I start talking about my proposal, and then you give your options, and I push back for some reason, and I notice I'm already giving feedback in the public way, and I see you are like a bit, you're defensive in a
Yeah.
way, or what I decode for me to be defensive. And then maybe out of the meeting, I come to you, right? The worst way of giving the feedback is come out to you and say, hey, Alfonso, why were you defensive after I said that? Because like, I don't know if you were defensive. I
You're
imagine you were
assuming that.
defensive,
Yeah.
right? So the I think the best way will be to, or a better way will be to come to you and say, I've noticed you did this. Even like very, like talk like if you were a 5 years old baby person, right? I've noticed you were putting your hands like this, and I assume you were defensive. And I've noticed this also. I'm assuming this because also the way you were speaking, for example, you said that. What made you do this, right? And that's also about language. Like generally, when you say why you do this, already puts people in a defensive. Like it feels you're doing. Why are you doing this, right? But if you say you try to speak more on the fact, what made you, what drove you to that behavior, people can disconnect from from the judgment, and like be more open, have a more an honest conversation about this.
I have a question because I think your job, a big part of your job at least, is oh, that's really cool with the Miro logo. Really
Yes.
cool. Yeah. A big part of your job, if I have to guess, I would say that is giving feedback and receiving feedback from engineers. Uh, what is your current approach to feedback? So, because you say that there are a lot of cultures and everyone uh, gets and receives feedback in a certain way. So currently, after so many years of experience, did you find a way to average the feedback you are giving, or you personalize the feedback for that
you
person?
you
So
you, you can't average. You can't. It's like, I mean, of course you can. I mean, nobody stops you from averaging, but it might not yield the result you want.
you are
w-
customizing the feedback based on the person you're giving it.
yes, and look, the easiest thing is to ask. Like, again, do not assume. Ask. Right? Like, there is actually a nice article from Lara Hogan. She's super cool. She talks about the first one-on-one. She has a list of questions, and one of the things she advocate people to ask is like, how do you like to receive
You like
feedback, or like, what is your relationship with feedback? uh, like, I've actually heard people telling me, I don't like receiving feedback. If you really need to give feedback to me, write it, give me a few days, and then we talk about it. Which, like, I'm the opposite. Like, if I receive something written as a feedback, I will take this much more cold. I will
mm,
feel like, yeah, I'm being more judged. Like, yeah, I like feedback as a act of care. So if you do this in person, I will perceive it as a, you want to help me. So I appreciate you giving the feedback as a.
mm, are you blocked?
Hello.
Uh, yeah.
I might.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. You're back.
my
You're back.
laptop kind of did something weird.
No worries.
Um, I was saying, yes, I was saying that feedback is, for me, is an act of care. So, like, if you do this in person, like, I appreciate it. Like, it's it's like you take the effort to come to me and do it. And if you do this by written, it becomes more formal. So I will perceive it very different than the other person and just give you the example, right? So that's why I think averaging out, you can, but it's good to know what you're working with, right? So, like, it's good to ask people, even in a team, right? Even if you are just an engineer, it's good to ask, like, how do you work with feedback? It doesn't take a lot, and actually build trust.
Yeah, that's happened in my first one-on-one with my current manager, and she asked me all those questions, and it was quite useful both for her and for me. So that's a really great way to proceed. But back to our notes, I think we talked a little bit about feedback and culture. There is one topic that I'm really interested in, which is English.
Mhm.
Um, I think both of us currently are speaking in English, but of course we are not native speakers. And um, at least for me, learning English was never on top of my priorities. At least not in the last 20 years. But in the last couple of years, I said, okay, I want to do something that I really love. And I know that unfortunately, at least right now, I cannot do this in my country because a lot of factors. But I am quite sure that I want to do something and I want to communicate with engineers from all around the world. I want to learn from all of them. So I decided to take a lot of time and study English in a good way. Well, the result is not the best, unfortunately, but
You are doing it, so it's okay, right?
yeah, exactly, we are progressing, so when I started learning English, I, as you said before, I thought, okay, I cannot do that because at least when I was in the high school, I didn't have the opportunity to practice spoken English, so my English was really, really bad. And then I started to apply for English companies, and it was a mess, literally. So, how do you think? First of all, do you think that? But I guess so. That learning English is important for engineers, especially. And how? What are your advices to learn this language and to practice it?
Yeah, I want to actually go beyond engineering. I don't think that learning English is good for engineering. I think learning English is good for yourself as a human being and yourself, whoever is watching this. Um, why is, and it's not only about learning, it's about perspectives, right? Like if you read Italian or you speak Italian only, you are pretty much going to get input from what, 60 million people. If you speak English, you're going to get input from pretty much almost the whole world. That's the richness. That's it, right? So this is about like what you can hear, what you can read. It's about news. It's about how you make coffee. It's about how you make baba ganoush, whatever is. I love food. I talk a lot about cooking, living the stereotype here. It's about how to learn a new programming language. It's about how what happens in the other part of the world, and try to hear this from first-hand people, right? Like imagine hear protests somewhere in some places of the world. You read this from the news of Italian news, and you have a proxy, you have a translator, but you can actually read it or hear it from the people that are living this firsthand, right? So it's like it just opens perspective, right? And I think nowadays it's a must. I am actually very scared of. I get always scared by the new generation of the kids I see here in Berlin. They speak that like they are, I don't know, 5 and they speak 4 languages. Like they're just little monsters, you know. Like it's insane, right? And so I think we need to be cautious of that, right? And that's what I'm. This is what I mean. That's what I also meant when I was talking about we Italians oftentimes are self-centered. We imagine that what we have around us is normal. So you know, like if I don't know, like 50% of kids don't speak English, we expect that 50% of kids in other parts of the world don't speak English, but that's not the case, right? And so for people's future, but also for like just understanding of the world, it's I'm going to diverge, but I want to give you this as an example. I was talking with some colleagues about remote work or working at the office, and this person, she's a researcher, UX researcher, and what she told me was that for her, office is a normalizer, because it's a bit like Grembiule. I don't know the thing in when you go to elementary school, like you put this on top of you and everybody's equal. So same thing, the office. Whether you have a large apartment that you have a dedicated room for work, or you don't have space, the office provides you an environment which normalizes everyone, right? And I think English provides that. Be able to speak English provides a normalization, right? Like you can, you know, your group becomes of incredible amount of magnitude bigger just because you speak English.
Yeah, and regarding to that, one thing that I thought when I started learning English is that okay, if I learn English, I will have a competitive advantage over my peers. But in the end, I discovered after more or less 1 year of talking in English all the day, is that if you don't know English, if you don't practice English, you have a competitive disadvantage.
Disadvantage,
Is
yes.
that because
Yes.
it's the standard right now,
Yeah.
and it's quite interesting that at least in my bubble, no one cares.
Yes, and that's the point, and that's the fact I'm talking about being self-centered, right? Like we imagine that that's what we see around us is what it is, but no, it's one version of what is possible.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we're already kind of more at 1 hour of conversation, and I'm sorry if we are.
All
Uh,
good, all good. I
yeah.
I don't have anything particular to do today,
Okay.
apart from enjoying some sun at the balcony later on, but it's okay.
Beautiful. So if you have a little bit more time, we have two topics to discuss about, which are engineering practices and career. If you like, I want to start with career
Hmm.
because I think it's quite an important topic, and our community really like understanding how career works, because we have a lot of great examples, but we have a lot of bad examples. So I guess I have to say that you are a really good example. So let's talk about, a little bit about career. First of all, promotion. A lot of people asks us how to go from junior engineer or from a stage to a middle engineer or a senior engineer level. What are your 2 cents about that? That's a
This is a very good question, and uh, let me ask you a question back.
yeah. Let's do it.
Why? Why do they want to do this?
Hmm. Oh, that's interesting. Um, Honestly, a lot of people say, "I want more money. I wanna get more money, and I wanna have more responsibility." We have a tiny mentorship program with, mentors and mentees, and a lot of mentees just say, "Hey, I have a lot of energy. I wanna use this energy. I wanna have more responsibility on what I do." And
Yeah, yeah,
this not happens always with Italian
yeah,
companies.
yeah. Cool. That's it's good. So knowing Italian market and Italians in general, I imagine that money can be part or sometimes the main reason, at least for a part of the people. Sorry if this blurry thing sometimes works weird.
No worries, no worries.
Um, I I think we should split that, right? I mean, doing this for money is not going to last very long. There are studies that's very interesting. There are studies that say that I don't know what's the number in Italy, but I think in average in Europe is the satisfaction you get from a raise after 80,000 gross a year lasts 15 minutes. So like imagine, you earn 79 and then bring you to whatever 85, and this satisfaction will last 15 minutes. It's
It's
already
like,
no, whatever, like, right? So the reason why Italians are focused on that is because uh, it's because like average salaries are very bad in Italy. So like it doesn't, like, having an increase will help you to have a better life, right? But oftentimes when you go over 80, it does not change much, right? So it's not that something in your life is going to change. So everybody should have more money, but I don't want to talk about that right now because I don't think that's the right motivation. Like it's a more systematic problem, right? That then we want to work, we want to push our, like, we have also an extrinsic motivation because of money, because of this. That's part of it. So let's say that we want to become better because we love our job and we want to improve. I think there are few ways to improve ourselves. One is have a group of people around us that we can learn from, right? Um, you probably are in a company, you probably are in a team, you probably there are some people you respect because of their seniority or what they're doing. Like be their koala, hug them like if never would be the case. Like stay around them, discuss with them, exchange ideas, try to be open about any other thing, right? Like maybe you have a solution to a problem you think is the best, still go to them and get other input. That's another thing that goes in your toolbox and you can use it another day. Or maybe you just hear a different way of thinking about that problem that you can use another time. Read, learn. Like I think it's all about this, right? Promotion, it's a very promotion, or like I would say promotion, even finding a job, it's a combination of multiple things, right? It's about luck, which is being at the right place at the right time, and then skills, right? And I I mean, you said I made a good career, like I'm a good example. This morning before joining the call, I was thinking, but why Alfonso thought of me, or like, who am I to do this? Like, and that's it's. I guess it's normal. Everybody will have a bit of this by time to time. So like, I was lucky. I found myself a few times at the right place, and yes, maybe I'm good, but probably other people could do the same if they were at the right place, right? I'm not unique. I probably 50% I was lucky, right? So, but promotion, there needs to be the opportunity in the company, and in Italy, unfortunately, it's a bit tougher, right? Because there is economy moves slower. Um, Also, companies, especially if you work for large organizations like, I don't know, Accenture, or like these large companies, like moving up is harder because just there is a lot. But I think the center of it is learning. The center of things is really learning, and try to learn new things and work with others.
a, a really good advice. But apart from promotion, what do you think should a junior developer do in order to, increase his own skills? You said the koala example and learning, but what about apart from that? Do you have any other trick?
On them getting promoted, or on
Uh,
what is happening.
Never mind the promotion. Never mind the
Uh-huh.
promotion. Just talk about how to improve
Uh-huh.
as a
Uh-huh.
developer, as an engineer.
Yes.
Both from a hard skill point of view and a soft skill point of view, of course.
I mean, again, it depends on people, right? There are some people that learn from doing. There are some people that learn from reading. There are some people that learn from community. Like I'm more the type of person that if I'm not around a community, I will stagnate. I will stop my learning, right? So like for me, top priority is like really have other examples, see how other people do things, right? So like I remember when I was a junior engineer, I pretty much had probably like 5 6 mentors, and this is what I was learning. Like, oh, maybe work on open source projects, so you expose yourself to many other engineers. Like just be out there. Like university is a very good gym, right? Because you have a lot of engineers which are pretty much on your same level. It's not necessary you need to have like a rock star, but like you probably recognize this when you did the interview for this German company. Like what you know is important, but how you learn and how you improve yourself is more important, right? So that's the part that you need to train. When I hired junior engineers, maybe I can talk about this, can be more insightful. When I hired junior engineer, I do not look at what they know. I assume they know nothing, and what I check is how fast they can learn.
And how can you try? How can you understand how fast they can learn in a couple of interviews? Do you have
You
any pattern for that?
Yeah, I mean, you can do this in many ways. You can, for example, bring them to situations they are not able to solve. They're not able to solve, and you see how they
And
approach
understand the
themselves to the
change.
problem. Or, for
Okay.
example, you bring them to a technology problem that they are little familiar with, And you see how they do this. Like they do in pair programming. Like pretty much the interview you did, you said that you were doing this pair programming with this principal engineer, and like those are the ways that you understand how people approach themselves to the problem, right? Like if a junior engineer, even though their knowledge is weak, right? Like it's not the, you don't hire a junior engineer because you want them to be able to solve a problem, right? You hire a junior engineer because you hope the company has to invest in them to grow. But would you, as a company, when you are a junior engineer, you basically buy loyalty because you help them to grow, and then as a reward, they will feel attached to that organization. Like we feel attached to University of Salerno because they taught us a lot, right? And then we feel, you will not leave that place just because another company comes in, right? You will feel motivated about all of this. Um, so like if I have a big problem to solve and I want this to be solved fast, I hire a senior engineer, a staff engineer, a principal engineer. I don't hire a junior engineer. I hire a junior engineer if I want to bring diversity to the group, if I want to have a team of all senior engineers will not really work well, right? You need to have a different mix sets of skills, different seniority levels, different opinions. And
What are the key skills that you think a junior engineer can bring to the group? You say that it's good to have a little bit of diversity, but if you have a problem to solve, what do you think a junior can bring?
I mean, their approach. Okay, let me give you this one example. So in my time of Bubble, I actually worked on a few programs. I first worked on a program to help senior engineers become engineering manager, and this was because engineering managers, like people think that after senior engineer there is engineering manager. What people don't understand, that's a different job. And it's very frustrating because you go from being one of the smartest people in the room to the one that doesn't know what you're doing, pretty much, right? So it's a very destabilizing. The other program I made was for engineering manager to senior engineering manager, which is pretty much when you start managing managers. And another thing I was working on is actually help people change career. So I actually the first try of this program was a tech recruiter, which was hiring for my team, became an engineer in my team. And she learned JavaScript from, on her own. I was helping her a bit, giving some exercise. And then she joined the team like 50% part-time. And after 6 months, she became a junior engineer. Now, you might say, what does she bring? She brings all what she's done in her previous years. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of approaching problems. It's a different way of discussing problems. It's a different way of giving and receiving feedback, right? Like writing code. Like I think probably we can come this from the very beginning of our university, right? You remember, if you had a clear algorithm in your head, writing down was very simple. But if you didn't have a clear algorithm in your head, writing down was like random, right? So that's the part that a junior engineer brings. Like, let's not assume that the knowledge is only about what technology you know and what problem have you seen, right? But how you approach yourself to problem is very important.
Wow, what an interesting point of view. I
I
have
can tell you another thing. In this program that then we started, we actually hired. What we wanted to do, we wanted to bring diversity to the team. So we run this program, was called Bubble News. We run it twice, and we are pretty much hiring people that didn't have they were not engineers before, or they were part of a minority. And we hired an engineer. And she had a marketing background. I was working in growth at the time. I don't know if you're familiar with what growth is, but pretty much is the part of the organization that tries to generate revenue for their business. So it's about experimentation and trying new things. And she became, I mean, I think she's one of the best engineers I've ever seen. Like the way how she approaches things. I mean, she still has a lot of things to learn, but you could see since the beginning when she was a junior engineer that she knew what she was doing, right? And she was a lot about how she engaged in communication, how she drives things. Like after 2 years, she was able to. She was working from infrastructure to CSS, so she was writing Terraform, working with serverless stuff. Like she will understand how to manage load, how to manage distributed systems, how to manage async systems. She was working on front end as well, with React and all the rest. And why? Because she wanted, and because she had the right mindset. So that's it.
Now that you made me think about this, I had the same kind of when I was in an Italian company. I had the opportunity to hire, my little team, and I hired a person who had a totally different background. She had just, one course of one boot camp up to 4 months, and in 6 months she was already the smartest people in the room. So I can perfectly get your point. Oh, well, never thought about it, but never mind. Um, in our notes, you say that feedback and community is the key in order to improve as a person and as a professional. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and I assume we are talking about career, right? Like one of the thing that so let's start. A junior engineer. A junior engineer doesn't know what they don't know. It's just, and when you grow, when you start learning, you just have a better understanding of what you don't know. And so what is the best way to understand whether you're going the right way or the not the right way? Like if you're going the right direction, if you're learning the right things, if you are approaching your mindset in the right way, it's feedback, right? And how do you get feedback is if you have people that work with you and if people that you engage with, right? So that's why I was saying that community is key. um, if for the people that the mentee in your group, I recommend them to engage a lot with their mentors, try to get feedback, like like even every couple of weeks, like even a little feedback, maybe it was a behavior, maybe it was a way of doing something. And we should try this not to uh, um, like if we try to see feedback as not as a personal judgment but a thing, imagine you're trying to do something very mechanical, right? Like you want to maybe sew a piece of wood, right? And then somebody is watching you say, no, don't put the saw like this but like that, right? We don't take it bad, right? We take this as a guidance. And imagine that you try to ask feedback as an observation of what you have done in that little case, right? And then it's just a way to understand this is better than that, right? And if you keep doing this, then you can adapt your behavior and improve your behavior to the right direction. And without people, you can't get this information, right? Like you need a mirror. You need something that makes you see yourself. I don't know if you ever heard mirror like feedback as a way how to see yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
let me um let me relate this topic because I think they are two really related topics. We're talking about feedback and community. How do you think that community and professional networking are related? Because, for example, in the last few months, thanks to our community and thanks to LinkedIn, for example, I'm receiving a lot of feedbacks, and I literally feel I'm growing and I'm improving and I'm learning a lot of useful stuff and knowing a lot of great people like you and other person I interviewed. So, what do you think is the relation, and how do you think networking can impact our lives, and how to, how to make good networking? I know
Yeah.
that this is a big topic, but
Yeah. Yeah, I
we
mean,
just-
networking, and probably that's what I meant when I was talking about community. Like, it's very important, right? Like, networking is important from multiple aspects. We were talking right before about feedback. They can provide you insights, feedback, but it also provide you uh, opportunities, right? Like, tomorrow I want to change job, and I have a large network. I might say, hey, I'm looking for a job, and those people, it just increased the likelihood for me to be at the right place at the right time, right? Or maybe they, like, you reach me out, you say, oh, do you want to do this? I never done it, and I never thought about doing something like this, and it's cool, it's fun. I spend some time thinking about why I should talk about something or something else, right? And so, like, it's reflection, it's learning, it's there's so many aspects that networking can do for you. Also, to give you an example, and we're talking about before about my previous managers at Bubble. The previous CTO of Bubble invited me to this CTO club in Berlin, and I had the opportunity to actually meet other CTOs in other organizations and ask them questions and learn things, and maybe how to deal with 24/7. How do you put 24/7 in an organization? Like, what are the difficulties how do you prep engineers for this? So problems that maybe that's one thing. If it's the first time you try to do something, it's the first time you try to solve a problem, having others that can give you insights and views on how they solve this in other, for themselves, it can give you insights on how you might behave or how you might approach it, right? So it's a bit like like you have these in engineering, like when we do software, it happens a lot, right? Like, maybe there is a complex problem, you might make a design review, or you might make some sort of documentation, you might make some sketch with a few options, you write pros and cons, and you try to get feedback from others, because others, maybe they have done this before, right? And their feedback say, oh, when we have done this in this situation, this create this problem, right? And without this input, you might be wrong, you might go in the wrong route, right? So that's what networking is. And you can apply this on coding, you can apply this in making life decisions, you can apply this in whatever, right? It's a safety net in a way. It's like a supporting group, I would call it.
And do you think that networking in person is more uh, efficient in some ways? It works better, or do you think that networking, like we are doing right now, works at the same? Because I feel that seeing a person in person is quite different, honestly.
Yes,
I really
yes.
enjoy calls like this, I really enjoy interviews like this, but meeting a person personally is different, at least for me.
Yeah, it is. Actually, I was talking about that with a psychologist 2 weeks ago, and she mentioned that is actually what happens. It's like it's something really chemical, like the brain. I probably can't say correctly what she said, but something chemical happens between the two bodies that they are together, and there is a stronger so, like, what you call empathy, some sort of thing, like there is some sort of connection. So yes, even Sai says that is different. Now, how much different, it's up to us to say. In my opinion, networking in person it's important because of relationship, right? Like, we should not imagine networking as a cold thing, right? Like, I mean, I can have a network of 2,000 people in LinkedIn, but that doesn't mean anything, right? Like my network is probably a group of people that I have some sort of relationship, some sort of trust, some sort of um, knowledge shared between us. Like
Also experience sharing that is quite difficult to do it.
exactly, right? Like go for a beer after after a tough conversation. It's quite important, or like yeah, of course, like connecting with people, it's very important. And we talked offline or online, but before recording about that, right? Like I'm actually very curious and to understand what type of network we have in our area, um, so I can actually leverage that as well.
When you said, you mentioned a lot of times that in Berlin there is, well, you didn't mention explicitly, but from what I understood, I got that in Berlin there is a good network of engineers, startups, and people which are interested in doing innovations and stuff like that. So I am thinking a little bit of how can be my life in Berlin because looks quite interesting, but never mind.
Yeah,
Maybe in the future, who knows?
yeah. I mean, the thing is, so you need to imagine Berlin is probably 4 million people city,
It's huge.
but within Berlin there is what I call the startup bubble, and it's a village.
Why do you
Like
call it bubble? You mean by bubble in the negative way or bubble?
no, it doesn't have to be. It's just a bubble. Like people in the startup stay with people within the startup. And it's like a bit of a uh, it's like a small village within Berlin, right? Like so you see that there is like 1 out of 10 people in Berlin, it's or 10 is too much, but like if you are in specific places, like everyone is an engineer or a product designer or a product manager or something, like something related to tech, and the discussions are very eye-opening, right? Because they come from that place and they've seen that you can relate how engineering in security works differently from product or works from like you really understand the different views. Right now, for example, I worked in 4 companies here in Berlin, and I can tell you they all work very different, even though the job was pretty much the same. So it's quite interesting.
Wow, that's an interesting topic. Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to stay in this kind of context, but probably that's an experience that I will do in the future. But never mind. Last block of our conversation in our notes, and I'm sorry if we are going too late, but no worries. Uh,
It's completely fine. Don't worry.
Okay, I promise we will not take too much. So let's talk a little bit about engineering. Of course, we're both in the engineering side. We are doing totally, I would say, different jobs because I'm an engineer and you are the head of engineering. So for me, it's kind of, uh, you
No,
know,
that's one thing that is very wrong. That is hierarchy is not like yeah. Okay, we can talk about this. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, okay. So you're working as an head of engineering. And of course, your job is literally different from what a developer is doing. You are not coding anymore, of course. So what are your daily challenges? What do you do in your job, and what do you think is different from coding to head of engineering?
Yeah. So just the thing about hierarchy, and again, this comes from they probably talk about hierarchy also in the culture map book. Um, if we're talking about old, when I say old, I don't mean by age, but the old mindset companies, hierarchy is a way of control. In the new uh, way of companies works, and there are books that talk about this in leadership books. It's a way of enabler. It's a way of distribute information and context, right? So like head of engineering is not necessarily more important than an engineer. because the head of engineering without the engineer does nothing. So and vice versa, right? This is imagine they're all cells of one organism, right? So you are not saying the cell of the muscle is more important or less important than the cell of the bone. Like if you don't have those together, nothing works, right? Going back to your topic, what is my day like? So you need to imagine that I strive for two things pretty much. One is make decisions that other people are not comfortable making. And the other thing is make myself redundant. Those are the two North Star I pretty much have, right? And the day is very scattered compared to a software engineer. I remember my times as a software engineer, you have your task, you oftentimes go deep, right? You go on focus, you have few hours where you go there, you stay there. My day is pretty much when I have focus for 2 hours is once a week, right? I pretty much have
You have kind of a manager schedule, I would guess.
Yes. I calls with several parts of the organizations, sometimes direct teams, sometimes stakeholders. We try to align on what challenges we might have or what the future might look like. So it's all about these maybe challenges about people, these type of things. That's what it is. But generally, context fluctuates quite a lot, and it goes from short term to long term very easily, right? So one moment I'm talking about an incident we have on production, 20 minutes later I'm talking about what are we going to work in 3 years, these type of things.
How can you handle this context switch? Because it's not just context switch about activities, but it's context switch about topic, different teams, different stuff. So
it's very hard, and nobody has a good way of doing this. You from one side you get used to it, you get more used to it, not used to it, but you adapt as a human to deal with that in a way. But it's difficult. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Yeah.
And before you said something that I found quite interesting. You say that your second main job kind of is to be redundant, is to not be the single point of failure in your part of the organization. How do you achieve this, if you can say, of course?
Yeah, I mean, it's to help other people to grow, right? There is a nice so imagine I want to make this connected to engineering work, so it's a bit easier to grasp, right? There is a junior engineer and there is a senior engineer, and imagine this to be like the difference between maybe an engineering manager and a head of engineering. Yeah. So the senior engineer generally maybe might lead larger projects compared to a junior engineer that might be just working on a piece or not even alone most of the times. So there is different scope, and how do you help the junior engineer take the work of the senior engineer? Because that's what you're trying to do, right? You want them to take your work so the senior engineer can do something else in a way, or more of that. You help them grow. It's a bit like this, right? So every time there are decisions or things that are dependent on me, I try to figure out how can I enable others to do this next time, right? How can I prep those people that are maybe reporting to me or even skip level reporting to me, enable to make those decisions by themselves, right? And from this, you actually have ideas on growth, right? What people can grow on.
So you are, as far as I understand, you are a servant leader, a communication hub, and you try to not be the North Star. So you try to be a decentralized communication hub, so that if anyone needs to find the solution to something, you give them the tools the next time to figure it out by themselves, right?
Correct. That's the idea.
Wow.
Easier to say than to do, but
yeah,
that's the idea.
I can just guess. So you say that you don't have a day. You don't have a kind of demo day or an example. You have different tasks and different topics. If you have to say what is the hardest part, or not the part that you hate but the part that you want to avoid of your job.
To be honest, don't really have something that I wanna avoid. Let
Really?
me think about it. I mean, hiring, I like hiring a lot. I think it's very fun.
What about firing?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's not pleasant, and if I can avoid, I can avoid. I would avoid, but I also understand that if I don't do it, I'm going to make a bigger problem for my organization. Um, let me give you this example. Imagine that in your team there is someone which is toxic, right? It's like setting the team down. Yes, I wouldn't. I would love this person not to behave that way, and probably the first time we try to give feedback in a way, this person might change their approach. But if we realize that the only way to move on is to make this person leave the organization, any, and that's one thing which is very important in my job. Uh, that's why I said I make decisions where people don't. I make the decision that other people don't feel comfortable making. Oftentimes, people think that not making a decision today but making tomorrow, it's delaying a decision. But apart from delaying a decision, is also deciding to not to decide today. And if there is something that I don't like doing, or for some reason I want to postpone, I need to ask myself, is me deciding right now not to make this call is going to create any problem for others? Like, what impact is it going to have? And going back to the example of this toxic person, I might delay this for a month, but the result is that after two people of maybe the top performer of the team might leave because they don't want to work in that way, right? And I created a massive problem just because I let that, go. And that's something quite important, I would say.
And I know that there is no a clear answer to that, but how do you learn kind of to have this kind of responsibility? Because in my mind, you can learn it just by doing it. But if an organization gives you the ability to do it and you don't know how to do it, you can create massive problems for the
Yeah.
company.
So again, it's not very different from software engineering. And maybe I approach it that way because I was a software engineer, so I have that way of thinking. Like, it's not that if the company gives you the job, you are able to do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't give it to you. Right? Then there is a difference of experience, whether you are very experienced or at the beginning of your experience on that job. And, it depends if it's the first time trying to do it or not trying to do it. I think if you have done the same thing a few times, you feel comfortable, you know what to do, right? And imagine this in coding, right? You have solved that problem a few times, you know what to do. If it's the first time, what do? You ask other people, you make research, you write pros and cons, exactly the same, right? So same thing, if you need to make a difficult decision and maybe a large one that could potentially have large impact on the organization, you take your time to think about it. And if you not have done this before, you try to ask opinions from other leaders or from people in your network. Again, going back to the network, right? And you try to figure out what is the right thing to do here. It's very common that in management, and especially with people, there are families of topics, right? Like the instance you have to solve is 99% unique, just because of the person, the people you are involved, and the situation. But there are families, right? So like firing someone because of misconduct, or hiring someone because of this, or restructuring a team or organization because we need to change focus on the direction, right? So will be unique every single time, but there are things you can pick from your previous experience.
I can totally see the similarities with software engineering, but probably one thing that is different is the amount of leverage that you have. Because if a software engineer have a problem, maybe to not the best design, you have a problem on that specific part of the code, and maybe you invest a couple of days more and you can fix it.
Yes.
But if you make a mess, kind of, y- you have a lot more leverage. So
Yeah, it's absolutely. And the other thing, that's true, like the impact. There are, again, it's a bit like, again, I want to bring you back, that it is true, but it's also, there are ways on to mock it. When you want to do like a large architectural change, you don't, what you could do is build it from ground up and then release and big bang.
oh no,
Or
please.
exactly. Why? Because higher risk. Or you try to evolve the current structure in your target, and
Makes
then
sense.
you try to figure out whether you're going the right direction or not, right? So also organizational change, you can break them down in this way.
Good
So
about that.
so like there are ways, of course, to like in general it's like that, like you generally have more impact because you touch like at least 10, 15, 20 people when you do a change. um, but there are ways on work with this. The one thing that is very different in management though is a feedback loop, and pace
Okay,
of change, because like when you code, you write a test and the test is green or red right there.
yeah.
And with changes in management, figure loop are like months, 3 months, 6 months. When you make large changes,
So it's just about delay of the feedback.
yes, you understand whether you are wrong very like that's probably one of the frustration point of new managers, because they were used to be engineers, run the code, you know run tests and green or red, or even have a conversation with the engineers, right? They will write down, say it works, but when you start making a change, right? Like imagine your team, right? You run retrospectives and you change a way of working. Maybe you want to change the way you run stand-ups, or you want to change how you refine tasks, right? You can get a feeling right away whether it's better or worse, but you don't know whether it actually works. You need to wait a few weeks, right? And that's why. And management oftentimes is like it's even longer. And the other thing that is very interesting uh, with management that people don't realize is as a name, this thing I just can't recall it right now, um, uh, but basically imagine you are in an office, yeah. You join and you go working there, right? So you have your laptop in your backpack. You go there. There is your screen. You put the cable in. The screen does not work. How disappointing is that? And you say, oh, because you take for granted the fact that the screen is supposed to work, right? And you do not. What you look at is the times that the screen is not working versus the time that the screen is working, right? So when a team works fine, people assume that it's just working fine, and they do not imagine that there is an IT person going checking the screen every end of week whether everything is fine, or they do maintenance or whatever it is to be done with screens,
It's
right?
like breathing, if you breath, everything goes fine and no one cares. You're just breathing. But if you're not breathing fine, you notice the problem.
Yes, exactly. It's stuff that we take somewhat for granted, right? So that's the thing that is very different in management, right? Like uh, yeah, like people assume that if everything is working fine, it's just out of magic in a way. Oftentimes, I can guarantee it's not.
That's quite an interesting topic. Gaetano, this was probably the best interview I had in those few months. So I want to say you thanks for being here. But before we jump off, I have the last question. We talked about a lot of topics, and I can spot a few patterns. I can find a few answers to the question that I would make you right now. You changed a lot of positions, and you get promoted, and you reach that position, which is quite interesting, at least I would say. And you have a lot of leverage, and you can have a lot of impact over an organization right now. So, what is your recipe for success? If we want to call it this kind of career success.
Yes. Uh, I think there are few, I guess. I think I am where I am because I was doing what I like doing. So like do what you like in a way. I am where I am because I worked hard. So things don't come out of for free. Um, I was lucky. I'm here because I was lucky. You know, like maybe I didn't decide to come to Berlin. I decided to go to whatever another place, and maybe didn't will not work out. So I was lucky, and I was lucky many times. And I another ingredient is making connections. I have a lot of colleagues. Like I have people that I don't work with since 3-4 years, and I still have monthly calls where I exchange. We do peer coaching where we learn from each other. So keep learning, work hard, smart, not hard. By the way, it's not good to overwork. If anybody thinks that overworking is a thing, if you have a contract for 40 hours a week, that's what you have to work, no more, no less. Yeah, so curiosity, do what you like, work hard, keep learning, and have fun. That's important.
Beautiful, beautiful. Gaetano, still, thanks a lot. It was quite an interesting call with you, and I hope we will have more contact points in the future. So,
Yeah, I will be very happy to.
thanks.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Bye,
And have a
everyone.
good day. Ciao.
See you. Bye.